You are now listening to Bull Hook Golf, an unfiltered golf podcast taking you inside the ropes with unfiltered stories, insights, analysis, and exclusive interviews. Welcome back, everybody, to Bull Hook Golf, the podcast. My name is Matt Cook. Next to me is Mr. Bobby Brown, and boy, oh boy, do we have a special episode tonight. I feel like I say that all the time, Bobby, but we've got a live episode. It is the very first live episode that we are putting together. It is on millions.co. Oh boy. Bobby, I don't know what else to say there other than the fact that this is episode number 79 of the Bull Hook Golf Podcast. We're going to go over the Tour Championship recap. We're going to talk about the Walker Cup that is upcoming this weekend. Yeah. We're going to talk about the Ryder Cup with the USA Captain's Picks came out today by Zach Johnson. There's a little controversy around there. Twitter is in an uproar around it, so we'll certainly provide a lot of analysis around those picks. And then ultimately, what do we watch this week? Because there's no PGA Tour events, there's no Korn Ferry events, so we will certainly get into, and I already dropped a little secret there about that Walker Cup. Yep. A lot of people are going to be tuning in around that. It's kind of the perfect time with there not being a PGA Tour event. But Bobby, shout out to our live audience that is coming into us right now. So, folks, feel free to drop in some comments for Bobby and I, and we will certainly be answering them towards the end of the episode. So we have a live audience Q&A that's going to take place. I don't expect there to be many people on tonight just because it's our very first one, Bobby, and it's a little bit late on the East Coast. I know I was talking to my brother-in-law before this, and he's like, oh, man, I'm going to be asleep by then. But I told him that I was going to call out the gentleman that Jed, his name is Jed, Bobby. And when I was on the interview with the Fat Perez, we talked about how handicaps drive us nuts at member guests, because the good players always get screwed over by the handicap system in member guests. Guys come in with just these loaded handicaps. So, Jed, I'm calling you out. I want a rematch, and Jimmy said he'd fly me in. So just let him know when and where. I'm like a fighter right now, Bobby. All right. Let's go. Let's get it on. But let's start off.
You might be nervous, but you actually seem quite relaxed.
I'm quite relaxed right now, calling out people on our very first live stream of the Bull Hook Golf Podcast. And let's talk a little bit about the Tour Championship and Viktor Hovland's dominance, Bobby. How impressed were you?
I mean, I was 68, 64, 66, 63. That's pretty impressive. That'll win you $18 million and a big Tiffany FedEx trophy. That'll make your caddy extremely, extremely wealthy. And I mean, I think we just added a name that in that handful of names that we toss around, that who's the best player in the world, because it seems to change every 3 or 4 weeks. But I think he's officially joined the John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler deal right now. You agree with that? I mean, and now is he part of the big? He's the third wheel of the big three right now, or he sure looks like it, doesn't he? He's so impressive, man. I love everything.
Here's the thing.
I like when you say
Viktor Hovland. Here's the thing, Bobby. Viktor Hovland, he went from looking like a fraternity frat guy, college student who just took a massive rip of a bong out there, just smiling, his eyes are squinty, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, in the last couple weeks of the year, it seems like he matured right in front of our very eyes, and he turned into this true disciplined professional, almost machine-like. So what was the big thing that I noticed was the fact that he was all business, man. There were no smiles out there. He was deadlocked in. He was serious. He was in the zone.
You sound surprised. I mean, it's a Tour Championship. Who's not going to be all business when you're leading, when you're playing great like that? I mean, those guys, I don't care if you're battling for 27th or 28th, 29th or 30th. Those guys are those 30 best players in PGA Tour last year. They're all business all the time. They're the best players on our tour. They deserve the right to be there. And it was just an ultra sick performance by somebody that we're going to see many more ultra sick performances by. I'll tell you, you got to give a little shout out to his coach, Joe Mayo,
good old Joe Mayo
out of Vegas. He's kind of a Grant Wade, Mike Andy Bennett, Mike Plummer. He's kind of some of these guys, Dana Dahlquist. They all kind of teach a little. I don't want to call it stack and tilt anymore because these guys are more numbers oriented, scientific guys, and he is kind of a different. I think we talked about him an episode or two ago. I like him. He's a character. He's a poker player on the side. He'll rib and
Oh, little insight
yeah,
there. Poker player. Didn't know that. You're not going to read that in Golf Digest.
I think I threw that in a couple episodes ago. But he's a math and science and numbers guy, and he knows his stuff. And I was reading up today. I didn't know Victor was so into those analytics and that kind of stuff. And they're just a match made in heaven. And he has just hit a run for the ages right now. His iron game is sick. His putting is sick. His short game was obviously the only tool that was outside of the shed, if that makes any sense. And now he's bought into that his short game is fine. He's getting up and down from everywhere, and he just pretty much handled those guys out there. First 2 days, it looked like it was Colin Morikawa. It was obviously going to be the one to beat, and he had another Colin Morikawa weekend. I think he went like 70, 72 or something like that and faded back pretty late. I thought it was – our big thing we talk about, man, on the PGA Tour is like, how do you handle a 5 or 6 shot lead? Usually, what was a big lead that Morikawa had in Kapalua? Was that a 9-shot lead at one point that he pissed back? It was
Was it that bad?
Well, it was either a 9-shot lead or a 7-shot lead with 9 to go. It was just, you remember, he started dumping the chips and everywhere around. So yeah. I never thought something like that was going to happen to Victor, because he just doesn't seem like he's that type of player where he's going to get off the rails and continue off the rails. What I mean by getting off the rails is when guys get off the rails, they get off the rails mentally too, quite a bit, Matt. And, I watched a lot of it. I watched it for 4 days straight, hours on end. My posse's back in school. Everybody's back in school now. And so I had plenty of time on my hand. And I will tell you that at least Xander made it interesting for about 45 minutes or an hour with the rocket start that he got off to on Sunday. And so that made it interesting. I think he cut it down to about a 3-shot lead when they were on 14. And Victor made that 25 footer to save par, and then he came back with a quick birdie 2 holes later, and that was all she wrote. And how about Xander? I mean, he shoots 60. He looks like he's going to shoot 59 out there. He ends up shooting 62. In that 62, I think he had 3 putts inside 10 feet that looked like they were going in for birdie too. But he definitely went about his business, and he put a little bit of squeeze on Victor, but the cream rose to the top there. I mean, give Xander a shout out. 67, 64, 68, 62. Not too bad. Great. A nice little week for Wyndham Clark. He had a great Sunday. He finished third at 16 under. I don't even know what that pays, but I think it was probably like anywhere from 3, 4, 5 million, something like that. Obviously Victor was.
It's a good amount.
Yeah. Victor was $18 million. That's 1.8. And I think I think it's actually 20. I think 18 million is cash and 2 million goes into some kind of, structured deal. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Retirement or something. You're probably a college graduate. I don't know all that smart stuff. But my point is his caddy got swooped out a check for $1.8 million. 1.8.
I mean, that's life changing for a caddy. I mean, Victor's sitting there saying, I live in Oklahoma. Like,
my money goes a long way.
Money goes a long way. Like, there's not a whole lot that I need.
What a perfect answer. He's out there for, I think when you get that caliber of player, it's all about championships and trophies, and the money is just an added bonus. Of course, who they all think about the money at one point, but they sure don't show it. That's actually $2.1 million for Shea Knight, his caddy, in the last 2 weeks. $2.1 million. I was going through the math. He made $39 million this year. Shea's not getting, caddies don't, there's some kind of rumor going around social media that caddies get 10% of everything. Well, maybe 3 guys out of 100 get 10% across the board, and they've cut some kind of deal to take a lower weekly or something like that. But the standard rate out there for everybody to know is usually 10% off a win and 8%, 7 or 8%, depending on the player for not necessarily top 10 for everything else. And then you can get your little cheapy guys, Koreans, that still, a couple of them still go 10, 7 and 5 and trying to hit you at a low weekly rate. But it was just, it was a great week. Unfortunately, the week started off horrible on Thursday I actually think it started horrible on Tuesday of last week for Rory. I know he went back home for a couple days, somehow injured his back, probably being a dad or something like that, and he never got loose. But God, did he fight it out to finish fourth at 14 under or whatever, and he couldn't even keep the club in his hand for 2 days. It was just full on damage control. Damage control on his back and damage control on the golf course. And Patrick Cantlay slipped into a top 5 at 13 under. You call in Tommy Fleetwood. Listen to these names. Scotty Scheffler, T6. Scotty Scheffler got the yips, bro. We called it. He got the yips. You're the one who called him a choke artist. I never said that. That was all you. You got to take responsibility for that. I was in shock.
I do. I feel bad about it. I'm not happy that I said it, but I had to say it.
I like how you try to cover yourself and you're like, I'm not saying this. I'm saying this as motivation. And I'm like, oh my God, Scotty's listening to our podcast and he needs Bob and Matt's fucking motivation.
He's going to be, Bobby. He's going to be in the near future. But here's the thing. The reason why I said that was it just,
he's not,
it's tough. It's tough to watch, but at the same time, I thought about it even further, right? So most players, think of Ben Hogan, for instance. He fought the pull hook. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, what he have to do throughout his career, he had to learn how to swing to where he'd never hit a hook, mm-hmm. especially under pressure. Mm-hmm. Scotty Scheffler's, his mountaintop that he needs to overcome mm-hmm. is learning how to handle pressure, especially with the flat
I don't
stick.
agree with you. I'm just going to say that it's our live episode. We can go for a debate right now, but I don't agree with you. You don't have that much success over 3 or 4 years. I'll tell you what, the mountaintop he's got to get over is to start seeing putts go in, and he's getting a little yippy stroke because when it goes for months and months like this and you go Yahtzee in every stat possible on the PGA Tour and you don't win 3 or 4 times, it all comes down to putting. And Matt, it's quite simple. We've all been witnessing it on television for 2 months now. Did you see he had Old Faithful back in the bag last week?
He definitely did. And I was talking about it this morning is that's not going to help because you have 2 completely different feels. You're going from a spider, a TaylorMade spider, to a Scotty Cameron blade putter, and it's like there's 2 totally different feels.
But I think the transition would have been harder because he had Old Faithful for how many years going back to the Corn Ferry? Let's just call it minimum 6 or 7 years, probably longer. Then he goes with the human nature. I call it the human nature PGA Pro experiment. You got to put something on a bench for a while. So I think that transition was probably the one that was harder. And then I think going back to Old Faithful was probably a much smoother transition for him. Granted, he missed 2 putts at like 2.5 footers that I saw, and he missed a few others, and he's hit a lot of putts that aren't really coming, that aren't really, scaring the hole. You know what the deal is? One of the reasons, honest engine, why it looks so bad is because we saw him make so many putts the year before last, right? Every time he had to make a putt. I know your big thing is, he 4-putted Augusta and that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, he was freaked out.
You knew I was waiting to break that in there.
40-shot lead, you could be, you can 4-putt and get away with that. You just want to get it.
Yeah, but that's pressure, Bobby. That's not the yips.
Brother, you don't have to tell me.
That's pressure.
I've seen it up close numerous times. I know what pressure. I know what pressure can do to these guys. But I think with all his success and all his accolades, and honestly, all of his W's, that I just don't. I don't think it's I just think it.
But even go back to the match play against Sam Burns.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of examples as to him struggling under pressure. But here's the thing. He's so good and he's so talented with every other club in the bag. And yes, I mean, there could be a great debate between does he have the yips or does he struggle with pressure?
I think I think there's a hitch in his get along. I think that there's something wrong, that there's something missing right there, or, putting he's putting.
Well, did you see what his putting stat was for the week? He finished 30th.
Well, yeah. I mean, turn it upside.
Out of 30 players.
I mean, say no more. He finished 6th. I mean, he got beat 16 shots. I mean, he got beat 16 shots, and he had a huge head start. But he's just. Yes, I do think there's a little pressure in there, but I think the pressure is probably developed from the fact that he made all these things when he needed to win golf tournaments last year, and now all of a sudden he wasn't making them. How many times? He still won twice this year, right? Still won twice this year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he still won twice.
He won twice.
He just did it early, so you could. we've said it before on the show. You can make a case that he could have won 4 or 5 times this year if the pressure and the putting doesn't kick in. So they both start with P. So we're both right because it's one of those two, and it's honestly probably a combination of both of those. I get it, but he's get a little off season now, and he's got probably some work to do in the off season. I'm sure he doesn't have much going on. He's going to play. He's going to play the Ryder Cup coming up, and I don't expect to see him until we roll around in January and February. Now that we're going back to this old school schedule that we've had in the past, for people that don't know, these guys that made it to the Tour Championship, they will not be playing in the fall. You might randomly see a couple of them play at, obviously, Keegan is defending champion at Zozo, but we start up in 2 weeks here in Napa, and it's basically for number 71 through 200 that are playing in these tournaments, and some guys that finished in the top 125 last year, and we're all jockeying for that number, for the best number to 71 for our priority. More importantly, for most of those guys, it's getting inside the 125 to retain your status and your tour card next year. So not to take away from the championship, it was a great week. I mean, there was a couple disappointments. There were a couple bloodbaths there on Sunday. I mentioned Colin had a horrible Sunday. The one guy that I didn't want to have a horrible Sunday, Keegan Bradley, because I just root for him so much, and he's such a good dude, and he's so passionate. And if you had a daughter, you'd want her to marry Keegan. That's the way I gotta say it. If you had a daughter, you'd want her to marry Keegan, because he's just a great guy, and he's a great person to be around, and he's complete very professional, and he's very passionate, and he just had a terrible day with 73. He couldn't wait to get it to the house. He still slipped in the top 10, T9. It pays a lot of money, but it wasn't good enough. I don't want to jump into Ryder Cup, but it wasn't good enough for a couple things. Max Homa finished in the top 10, Fitzpatrick, Sam Burns. Big disappointment what's your big disappointment of the tournament? Mine's Sung Jae, finishing 25th or 26th, when I've been popping off for years. And after a second place FedEx Cup finish last year, that I thought he was going to get it done. And I did like his chances this year. But it's stupid me, when I make these picks, I'm like, oh, he's 8 shots back. He's starting
mine was John Rahm.
Yeah, that's
John Rahm, ever since he took that 3-week break,
you're right.
He just absolutely has struggled. He has not gotten his game back into form, and he's just it looks like he's semi-safety in it.
Yeah, he's something. So the deal was, I told you I watched a lot of coverage, but we actually do have, we have some terrible announcers, and we have some really good ones. And a couple of the really good ones were, they know what's going on. He's not cutting the ball. He's got left in that ball right now. And when you got left in your ball, and you are a slider of the golf ball, you're a cutter of the golf ball, bad things happen. And T18 is not John Rahm. I thought Tony Finau was a big disappointment too. He finished tied for 20th. Obviously,
yeah, I agree with that.
Jordan was a disappointment at 27th, but he's such a spaz. I mean, God, is he such a spaz that that's a disappointment. But I guess where Jordan was 2 or 3 years ago with the driver yips and everything like that, and he's back at the Tour Championship. He's certainly trending in the right way. So I don't really have.
What about your guy though? I mean, going back to Xander Schauffele.
Yeah, he's a stud.
This is your guy. You love Xander. He's a San Diegoan, and I just want to know, is it bad timing or bad luck?
Bad timing and bad luck, right? It's so hard to win. I know your big question that you've been saying for a long time is, how has he not won a major yet, right? That's your big question. That's always been your big deal, is how has he not won a major yet? Well, it takes a lot of luck to win a major, Matt. I mean, you got to have things go. You have to have things go the right way. He's a fan.
But he's so good.
I know, but he's won. He won 3 times last year. There's nothing wrong with him whatsoever. The ball's still got to go in the hole, right?
That's
and you
true.
Can't control the other.
I mean, I do have to appreciate this impact going in mid-sentence. That was phenomenal action there out of you. Just athletic ability out of Bobby Brown. I mean, some people say caddies aren't athletes. I say no, that's wrong.
Can I tell you something? God, it's Zen problem. It's obviously my off season, and my heart has been broken since my 6-year-old and 10-year-old went back to school, and I find myself starting a Zen at 7 a.m. with a cup of coffee and not finishing a Zen till about midnight, because I'm laying on the couch and I'm wide awake, and I have no self-worth right now, Matt, whatsoever. I have none. I mean, I am doing gardening. I am washing dishes. I'm doing everything. I'm cleaning out medicine cabinets. I am vacuuming.
You sound like the Cuban farmer I met when I went to Cuba, and all he does is frickin' roll and smoke Cuban cigars
Well, I
all
thought
day
you were going to say
long.
something else, but you had me at the
Cuba,
rolling.
Bobby,
You
Cuba.
had me at the rolling and smoking part. That's for sure. But where, but where were we? Now I'm totally lost track. Say rolling
Back to
smoke.
Xander, man.
Yeah, he's gone.
Xander he's on the hard side of all of this stuff. I mean, every time that he's playing well and in contention, somebody else is just playing a little bit better than him.
You know that's true. Somebody, you can't control what somebody else is doing, and last Sunday was a perfect example of that. He was the second best. But if you're ever going to be second best financially, this was a good week. That last week was a good week to be second best. I would tell you what, if you left Tiger Woods out of the scenario, Charlie Hoffman's told me Bill plays a bunch with Xander. Xander now spends most of his time in Vegas. But he lived in San Diego forever up until the last year. There's a rumor now that he's moving down to Jupiter to hang out with Cantlay and the rest of the crew, where they all end up migrating to anyways. Well, most of them do anyways. But Charlie Hoffman's told me on more than one occasion that Xander Schauffele is the best player other than Tiger Woods that he's ever played with in his life. So that should tell you something. He's like, Bobby, he goes out and shoots 60, 61, 62, 63 every day in our money games, every single day. And he makes it look so easy. He makes it look like it should be 58 or 59. So, I think
he's a machine. Is there a weakness in his game, though, that you have noticed?
No. There's no
fully well-rounded.
Fully well-rounded in the caddy department too. That's his best buddy, Austin Kaiser. And I've been chirping about Austin Kaiser since I took over the co-host position. And he is just, there's a couple guys out there that have special relationships, right? And that's Austin and Xander, and that's Joe Greiner and Max Homa. And it's not just from a work standpoint, it's from a personal, being besties kind of standpoint too. So, he's just good. He's just good in everything, right? He's just good in everything. I was often told some years ago by some veteran guys, like if you were going to give advice to a young player coming off the Korn Ferry Tour or trying to make it to the Korn Ferry Tour, or he's playing on the Korn Ferry Tour, what would the advice be? And these players would tell him whatever he does really good, to do it even better, that nobody does everything really, really good. You have to have one or two parts of your game where you're better than everybody else that day. And I feel like Xander has every part of the game. He's not the one that just relies on driving or the putting or the short game or the iron play. It's usually one of those four categories, right? He is solid in all four categories. So I would be, just like you would probably say, it'd be shocked if he wasn't a multiple major winner at some time. But, he probably thinks he should be a multiple major winner too. I'm not sure. But the longer it takes, what happens. The longer it takes, the less your confidence gets in those situations. And I'm not saying that that's happening to him, but I was thinking about this today. We're almost at it feels like the changing of the guard out here in the PGA Tour. Like it would take a while. You know what I mean? You had Phil and Tiger and everybody like that. And then all of a sudden guys like Dustin came along and that kind of stuff. And that was a new breed of athlete and that kind of stuff. And now you have your guys that are about 30 years old, Colin Xander, Wyndham's mid-20s. I don't know where to put Rory.
No, Wyndham's 29.
What is Wyndham's 29? I thought he was only 26 or so. Wow.
Let me double check.
Yeah, I think I'll go.
But I'm almost positive.
My over and under on Wyndham Clark is going to be 26 and a half. Let's see if I'm any good on our live show tonight.
Wyndham Clark, we are going with...
I think he's younger than you think he is.
Here we go. Born in 1993.
What?
How old does that
about
make
30, him? About 29. Yeah, I thought he was much younger. Wow, you nailed it. You're a good live show. You're a good live show guy. My point is I feel like now all of a sudden with Viktor and these mid to younger 20-year-olds, I feel like there's another influx coming. Does that make any sense? I feel like there's going to be another rechanging of the guard here in the next 2 or 3 years. And with the talent coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, I feel like there's going to be another one coming. So basically my point is I don't feel like the cycle is long as it was in the Tiger Phil days. I feel the cycles are shorter now. And I feel like anybody who says you usually pay your golf at 36 years old, I think I'm getting close to throwing that one out the window too. I feel like you're going to be playing your best golf from 26 to 32 or 24 to 32 because these kids are so polished coming out of college. And we'll get a look at that this weekend, really, won't we? With the Walker Cup.
Oh, we certainly
Yeah.
are. I mean, the Walker Cup is
God, I'm so
going to
glad you brought
be.
that up.
I'm actually pretty pumped about the Walker Cup just because of how good the talent is coming out of college and just, I mean, even with the mid-am and everything. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I do want to ask you, in addition to Xander Schauffele, you know, you're somebody that has dealt with back issues.
Yeah.
Have you ever had it to where, you know, you've been on the road a long time, you come home, you get some good loving, and you have a back injury heading into the next week? Could there be Poppy number 2 on the way?
You're talking about Rory.
Yeah,
I thought you said
I'm
Xander.
talking about Rory.
I mean,
No, I'm talking about you. I said we were talking about Xander, but I was asking you, you know, based off of your back injury experience.
well, the difference between me and Rory, sorry, honey. There's a lot of differences, but between me and Rory is it is much easier to come home and get some loving when you're flying private or on NetJets or something like that.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Trying to get an A1 through 15 boarding pass at Southwest for $40. But I mean, you can hurt your back at any time. So I will tell you this: he doesn't have the track record of being injured. There's nothing goes with it. WD doesn't even. You can't put a W or a D in Rory McIlroy anywhere because he's not this is the first time I think he's ever had any back pain. And honestly, if fluky things happen, and fluky things happen when you hit your mid 30s, right? That's when they usually start happening.
It's true.
And all the torque and everything that's been, that his body's gone through, and the transformation of him turning into like young, pudgy Rory into the specimen that he is now. He's a full-blown athlete now,
I thought you were saying that he's going to become pudgy, but no, he was pudgy and he got ripped.
With the long hair and he was pudgy and everything like that. Now he's a full-blown athlete, which most of these guys are, 6 or 7 out of 10 of them. If you walk up and down the driving range, that these guys start their morning off in the gym and they end their evenings in the gym after work. So, I don't know about the McLovin theory, to tell you the truth, but it
was just a theory.
It's a theory. It's a theory, and theories are great. It could be possible. But,
some might even say it's a conspiracy.
It's funny. We're not allowed to, obviously we're not supposed to gamble or anything like that with all the gambling going on in golf and that kind of stuff. But I'd be lying if I wasn't laying on the couch and I heard the story and then they showed him on the range and everything like that. And I'm like, oh my God, in my old gambling days, I would be hammering the shit out of whoever. I'm sure they do put it head-to-head matchups even in this format, but I would have been hammering the shit against him.
That's a good question. I don't know if I saw those.
That tells you why I don't gamble anymore, because I would have probably lost some serious money. But he is another guy that we are not going to see until probably maybe Maui, or when Torrey rolls around, or with this new schedule, Pebble Beach or something like that. So
let's talk about our penny bets then.
Well, and that's not even fair. I wanted to call you the day of the tournament and text you, but I didn't want you to be a big whiny baby about it. But there's no fucking way I was going to let you. I wasn't even thinking, you know what I mean? The staggered.
It leveled out, though, because Rory had a back injury and Sungjae didn't.
It didn't. Oh, there's the first F-bomb live. Sorry, folks. But I meant it. Come on, that's not even a fair bet. But I'm not going to sit here and whine about it. But congratulations on
up to 14,000 pennies. Folks, if you are just tuning in for the first time, Bobby started this going back over a year ago when he's like, well, we don't bet in bills, we bet in pennies. So we started doing these 1,000 penny bets.
$10.
And
I'm getting shellacked, man. Let me pick it up from here. I'm getting shellacked. Bobby Brown, insider information, trading. I see these guys every single day. I see these guys 260 days. I can tell you, I'm really good at. I'm good at what I say, or picking winners and that kind of stuff. I just suck when it comes to this. And why do I suck, Matt? Because what is it? I don't even know what side it is, but where is it? Where's your heart on what side? Hope it's not on the right side.
The left side. The left side.
Oh, that's good news, because I've had some issues on the right side.
Yeah. Actually, if you have pain on the right side, that's not good.
If you have pain anywhere, it's not good. I'll tell you what it is all these Koreans I work for, that their big CJ sponsor owns that Korean frozen food Bibigo, and now all of a sudden this orange chicken
Oh
and
no.
sriracha rice has hit my local Publix. So I ate it twice last week, and I'm like, God, I think I'm having a heart attack. Little did I know it's probably the secret sauce and the orange chicken. I lost train of thought again. Oh, our penny bet. Oh, I was going to tell everybody, Matt is kicking my ass, but
Uh,
Matt has played dirty. I dominated on live in the last, and I
really? Really? Who played
Matt's been
dirty?
playing dirty with me, but now I'm mad.
Wow.
And now I am effing pissed off that I am
Wow.
getting embarrassed and I'm
Okay.
down 140,000 pin.
Oh, yeah. By the way, everybody, since there's no live golf event, let me explain this as well. So, normally during live golf, we have golf picks, but louder. And it's a little bit of a mock on the whole golf but louder deal where we pick the last place individual and the last
Yeah.
place team. Guess who's really good at this? Me.
Well, let's back up. Guess who was really good at it before they took
No,
my
you picked Siwon Kim,
Yeah.
and then Siwon Kim was a cheat code. And I said it on an episode when you first won your first
Yeah.
event. I'm like, this is an absolute cheat
Yeah.
code. And then we'd go back and forth with the
Yeah.
team. Actually, I used to win the
Yes.
team just about every week.
No, you didn't.
And then all of a sudden, I baited you into picking one of your favorite people ever, Pat
Yes, you
Perez.
did.
And
That's when it all
all of a sudden, it all flipped
Yeah.
around, and I have taken Siwon
Yeah.
Kim in every single event since, and I have not lost.
Well-
I have not lost since I overtook your king, which was Siwon Kim.
That's all right. Maybe at some point
Yeah.
I'm gonna. But my luck only needs to turn 1 week for me to inherit him back, and I will. And this is the time of the year Mr. Fatboy Perez doesn't play good, and we've seen it his last 3 events. So maybe I'm gonna go with a. When do they play again? Like 3 weeks or 4 weeks? I don't even know. They got some.
It's after the Ryder Cup, isn't
Where's
it?
it at? I don't even know where it's at.
Who knows? Well, it's overseas. They're going back over.
London, maybe?
Saudi Arabia is coming up because they switched the final event. It's no longer Miami, or it's no longer
In Saudi.
Jeddah. Yeah, it's now going to be, and I get that mixed up because we got Jedediah for the actual like city. Who knows? But Miami is where they're going to end it. Everybody had an uproar about Saudi Arabia having the final event, so they're like, no, we want it at Miami. We want to derail it. We want the good old Trumpster to be there. So you got all that going for live golf, but now let's get into a little Walker Cup action, Bobby. This is right up your alley, and here's the key. The Walker Cup, okay? I'm going to start us off here because I know you're going to take over the conversation because you know a shit ton more than me when it comes to this. But this is the oldest international amateur match dating back to 1922. And here's the key, folks, and I'm sorry for all the international people, but the U.S. has dominated Great Britain and Ireland, catching up in now granted, GB&I has been catching up in recent years, but the U.S. owns a record of 38-9. It's going to take a long time.
Get it straight, 38-9-1.
Wow, I didn't see the one.
It's 38-9-1. But the Americanos, USA has
baby.
won the last 3. Has won the last 3 cups. And I'm just going to say this. This one's going to be an absolute bloodbath. I know it's St. Andrews. I know the Euros are probably, our team's been over there already for 2 days. It doesn't start until Saturday, so they're getting acclimated. They're doing all their work. St. Andrews is St. Andrews. You never know what the weather's going to.
First time being there since 1975 for the Walker Cup.
How exciting. But I will tell you this. If you went down our American team, I'm going to introduce our American.
Let's go down the American team.
Introduce our American team. Okay. And we're going to start with, everybody that we have on our team is ranked 14th or better. Can you believe that our worst?
It's stacked.
Listen, our worst player ranking might end up being the best player out of this whole group, and that's Preston Summerhays. He is ranked 14th. But to start off, I'm not going to even go through the rankings, but we have Nick Dunlap, who just won the US Am. He's a sophomore at Bama. He's already won the US Junior. You know all about, you like this guy, Gordon Sargent, the bomber from Bama.
Oh, I do.
He's the big kahuna. He's number 1 in the amateur rankings. He won the national championships as a freshman a couple years ago. David Ford, who is number 4, who is a future tour star. He plays at North Carolina. North Carolina has 3 players on the team. How good are they? And they didn't even do very well on nationals. They have Austin Greaser, and they also have a kid named Dylan Minante, who actually played his first few years at Pepperdine, and they transferred over to North Carolina. Then we have a guy named Caleb Surratt, who was a freshman in Tennessee last year. That was an All-American. Nick Gabrielchuk from North Florida, of all places, is a top 10 player. Stuart Hagestad is the token 30-some-year-old, 32 years old. And I think this is his 3rd Walker Cup. Ben James from Virginia is either number 4 or number 6 in the rankings. And then you have Preston Summerhays. Actually, one of those guys wouldn't play, but Michael Thorpe Jorgensen from Stanford, who's also a top 10 player, withdrew because he hurt his back. And I will tell you that I was kind of scouting out who the GBNI team was, and there's only one name that came to mind, and that was Barkley Brown. But I was looking at their rankings, and you got guys that are ranked 190, 213, 217, 64, 90. So I think on paper it should be a bloodbath. It should be an early closeout for the Americans. Now, weather and conditions are going to have a lot to do with that. The big thing about these Walker Cups, let's be honest, it's the amateur version of the Ryder Cup, really, isn't it? It's the amateur version of the Ryder Cup. So there's been some unbelievable Walker Cup teams, but the ebbs and flows and the emotions and, how you can pick up steam and feed off the crowd is obviously going to be a big thing for GBNI, because I guarantee you, I don't care what the weather's like, those fans over there, especially St. Andrews fans, they absolutely love their golf, right? So they're going to have a lot of fanfare out there, but I look for USA just to steamroll them. This team, I was thinking about it. This team, when I was looking down the talent and all these names that I know very well, I'm like, this could be the greatest Walker Cup team of all time in the future, in 10 years or 15 years. It could be, because there's been this big debate at Walker Cup time. In 2017, listen, I'm going to read off 2 teams for you, and you tell me which one of these 2 previous Walker Cup teams you think was the best Walker Cup team. You ready for this? 2017 was Cam Champ, Doug Gim, Colin Morikawa, Doc Redman, Scotty Scheffler, Braden Thornberry, Norman Zhang, Will Zalatoris, Stuart Hagestad again, and Maverick McNeely. Everybody on social media and a lot of guys with the USGA said, this was by far the best Walker Cup team ever. Okay. Listen to this 2007 team, which I think hands down, and it's not even close, was the best Walker Cup team ever. You sitting down? You ready for this team?
I'm sitting down.
Listen to this. Ricky Fowler, Billy Horschel, Dustin Johnson, Chris Kirk, Colton Oast, Trip Keeney, Jamie Lovemark, Jonathan Moore, Webb Simpson, and Kyle Stanley. That's the greatest.
So, I mean, we're kind of looking at greatness here.
Yes, I think that this is going to be, I think that this team this year could be as good as that too. That 2017 team that I just read off to you, which one of them didn't work out? Colton Oast.
It worked out for him, but just not in
golf,
playing
and Jonathan
golf.
Moore from Oklahoma State, who was a predicted superstar. Yeah. But you got Kyle Stanley, multiple winner, Webb Simpson, multiple major winner and players, Jamie Lovemark winner, Trip Keeney was a great amateur player. If you notice the theme in these Walker Cups, they have an older player in there, a young 30-year-old or a mid 30-year-old. Chris Kirk, multiple winner. Dustin Johnson, 20 sometimes. Billy Horschel, FedEx Cup, 6 or 7 wins. Ricky Fowler, Players Championship. I think that this team this year could be as good as that team. Now, I won't be alive to answer these questions in 10 to 15 years, I don't think, if they work out. But that just goes to show you where the talent is. It's unbelievable. These guys aren't even seniors, most of these guys. They're like juniors and fucking sophomores, man. Let's get to the Walker Cup on Saturday. I can't wait to watch.
I can't either. I'm absolutely pumped about it. It's going to be on early. Love that. And, you can have your coffee going and nice little breakfast while you're watching.
Is it going to be? It will be on early, but I don't think I think it's.
It starts at 8:30.
On the Golf Channel?
Yeah. Hang on a second. It's on Peacock and the Golf Channel.
Okay. Why did I think I scrolled on it and it said like 5 p.m. or something like that? And that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever, because they're 5 or 6 hours later than us. They better not be.
No, I thought I added it to my notes. Hang on. Maybe it's in this one. No, it's not. So I did not write it down. My apologies, everybody, but I believe it's at 8:30. I don't know if that's local time for me, which I'm on Pacific
Yeah.
time. So that would end up being 11:30 for you,
which
Bobby.
makes sense. That's like 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 and 3 or 4 in the afternoon over there. That's when the heat of the battles get going. So it's a 2-day affair, 2 sets of matches, and I look for the U.S. to win it.
Bobby, why don't you take us through Great Britain and Ireland?
Barkley Brown. I know.
Well, we got Matthew McLean. Okay. So he's the 30-year-old.
Okay.
So he's the old one who was the mid-amateur champion from
those
last
guys
year.
That play college golf over here. I do know that there's a couple guys that play college golf. But
which a couple of them, I mean, one of them in particular is Callum Scott, who his older brother, Sandy, he played on the Walker Cup team back in 2019 at Royal Liverpool, and he currently goes. So he followed his older brother to Texas Tech, and that ended up getting him onto this team. Obviously, like you said, Barkley Brown, who is a Stanford standout. You got Jack Bigham, who is the 2021 British Boys Champion and a Florida State freshman. So obviously, all these guys are coming over, playing college golf over here. So. Certainly James Ashfield, he's the 2022 Welsh Amateur Champion. I mean, you've got a bunch of champions here on the Great Britain and Ireland team, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be tough to hold a fork to this Walker Cup team from the U.S.
We're too sad. Preston Summerhays is our highest ranked guy at 14, and I think he could end up being the best one out of all of them in 10 years from now, PGA Tour career-wise.
Worst ranked, yes. I completely agree. I mean, he's got the most potential out of everybody, in my opinion.
And I don't think they have one player inside the top 30, honestly. I could be wrong. I don't know if your notes show that. I think they do some rundowns on every player, but I don't have much more to say except I think it's going to be an absolute bloodbath, my friend. Absolute bloodbath.
I do too. I think it's going to be a U.S. domination, and we can start chanting, "We believe."
Yes.
We believe that we can win. I don't know how the chant goes, but I love it when U.S. soccer comes around.
Yeah.
And they're actually in like the whatever it is that they play. And I'm not a huge football soccer guy, but man, is it a blast. The World Cup.
World Cup.
When that shit comes around, I am all in. I am pretending like I am an absolute scholar in the game of football because those chants are fantastic. I get pumped.
Well, man, ever since Messi came over here and signed with Miami, you can see soccer absolutely
actually
through the roof.
I've paid attention to Messi coming over, and he won.
Yeah. Did you see the cup? Did you see the cup game that was last week where they were down 2-0 and they popped a couple in and they ended up winning in PKs? I mean, is Messi not the greatest thing? My son, my 10-year-old, absolutely loves and adores Messi, and he goes, "I just want to play like Messi."
He's insane.
And if you watch Messi all game, what's he? He's standing around. He stands around all game. He stands around, and then he finds a spot and he scores. And he is. God, he's a thing of beauty. I'm getting all jacked up talking about it because it's soccer season over here with my kids, but he is single-handedly changing. I mean, soccer is – listen, I drop my son off 4 times a week for soccer practice. There are 300 kids in this Charleston soccer club. It's just unbelievable. And, I just –
The Charleston Soccer Club.
Yes, massive.
That sounds bougie as shit, Bubby.
Yeah, but my kid's in it, so it ain't bougie, that's for sure. But it's just, I'm like, I didn't know it was such. We got a guy over here, and his name's Derek Shipley, and he was with, I don't know, he was with a bunch of Euro clubs. He's like the Grand Poobah, and he's there. I did it. I said it for you.
Wow. You brought up 2 from the last episode. First, Derek Shipley, which you got a correction to make here.
I got to apologize because I called him Brett Shipley, the big fella who was the runner-up in the USM. Brett, I apologize. It's Neil. I apologize.
Oh, Neil. I'm saying Nate. I mean, we're all over the place.
I gave him a shout out too, because on this Walker Cup team, they actually do have 2 alternates, and that's Max Moldovan and Neil Shipley. So anyways, I was talking about Derek Shipley. So he runs this whole soccer club, and he's like, and I'm like, do you think that you're going to get an MLS player out of this? He's like, small chance. I go, when can you tell? And he goes, right about your son's age. I go, at 10 years old, you can tell. He goes, that's when we can really start telling, when they start developing. And I'm like, developing? Like hair on the huevos doesn't happen until much later than this. What do you mean developing? He goes, "No,
13, 14.
soccer skills." So I sit out there for an hour and a half and I watch these practices from across the fence, and there's 300 kids, and I am shocked at the talent that I see at these 12, 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, what they can do with the soccer ball. So now this is a soccer podcast, I guess, because you're talking to a guy who grew up on
Love
the soccer
that.
field, not the soccer pitch. To me, it was always a field, not a pitch.
Wow.
So I got to get that straight. What else you got?
A lot of Europeans are going to be upset with you
that's
over
okay.
that
I
one.
don't like them that much anyway. So cool.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, moving into the
Whoa,
Ryder
what
Cup.
a-
I mean, this created a Twitter storm
You knew it was going to
today.
happen.
Ooh.
Knew it was going to happen.
Is this a popularity contest now, Bobby?
I don't know, man. I didn't know. You know, I had two things on my calendar today. At 10 a.m., the sick SB Nike Dunk was dropping. And at the same time, Zach Johnson was coming on at 10 o'clock. And my priority was the shoe. And I picked up the show about 10 minutes after 10. And man, I mean, why don't you announce the picks? I want to give you, I just stole your show on the Walker Cup with my info. So you tell us the picks.
I greatly appreciate that. I'm gonna go right through. So we've got Ricky Fowler. We've got Jordan Spieth. We got Justin
I knew you were going to
Thomas.
say it that way. I knew it. Why wouldn't you? 3 for 1.
I mean, we
Buy one, get-
have the boys
Buy
club.
one, get two
and
free.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you add in Sam Burns, who he was a shoo-in because Scotty Scheffler, that's his best friend. And as soon as they said that, yeah, the players that automatically qualified are going to have a huge say in who is picked. Well, guess what? You got Sam Burns in there. That was never a doubt. If you were going to ask Scotty Scheffler who he wants, it's going to be Sam Burns. They're best friends. Then you've got Brooks Koepka.
Yeah.
So good old Brooksy is an interesting one, and we'll get into that in a second. But then you also have Colin Morikawa.
Yeah.
So that rounds out the captain's picks for the U.S.
Yeah.
Now, the guys that were left in the
The
dust,
guys who got snubbed. Can I take this one? Can I take it now?
go for
Okay.
You know what? You go
The
for it
biggest
because
snub
I've
of
got
the
a
year.
different list than you on
The
this
biggest
one.
snub of the year, Keegan Bradley. Keegan Bradley should have been on that team. If I'm not mistaken, Keegan Bradley, of those 3 picks that you just announced right there, the boys club, not one of those 3 won multiple times on the PGA Tour this year. Not one. And 2 of them didn't win. And one of them, did JT win?
Did Spieth win?
No, Spieth didn't win anything. He lost on playoff
He
at
didn't
Hilton
win.
Head to Fitz. But did the question?
Did JT
I
win?
don't think he did he? Yeah, we're
I don't
supposed
think
to be
so
experts
either.
on the podcast.
I'll do a quick check.
I don't
Go
think
ahead.
he did. I don't think he won, but I think, I think Keegan got snubbed, and I actually think Lucas got snubbed a little bit too, but heavy on the Keegan. And I'll tell you what, I know from my past 2 Ryder Cup experiences, 2010 and 2012, that it was a different element then, that there were a lot of egos in that locker room, and it wasn't a boys club thing. And everybody, as I said on past shows, everybody kind of went their own way, and they were very private and that kind of stuff. And this is more of a family type atmosphere. But you got these players.
No wins.
These players pull a lot of strings, and they're in Zach's ear, and Zach listened to them who they want. And I was a little surprised with. Okay, I wasn't surprised with JT. Everybody's like, "Oh, JT," and the live haters are having a field day with this, and this guy should have been picked. I mean, I read a live guy that said that Taylor Gooch should have got picked in front of JT. But the fact is I think JT's like 16-5-1 in his Ryder Cup things, right? And let's all back up a second. This is not a 4-day stroke play, Matt. This is mano a mano, team on team match play. Matches very rarely go past 15 or 16 holes most of the time, and this is his element. And I was thinking about this before the show. I'm like, who is like, most of these guys are so young. Who would be, there was always a leader on the ones that I did. Tiger was always a leader, or Phil was always a leader in the locker room or in the team room. But who's the leader? There's like no leader. There's just a bunch of guys that play golf together, and they're the best players in the world. But, Scotty put this clamps down to Zach and said he wanted Sam on the team. I totally understand that. But they had a terrible record in the President's Cup this year against the internationals. I'm sure they did not win I don't think they won a point. They might have got a half point, squeaked out with a half point at once. And I don't know what to think about the JT and the Spieth and the Ricky thing. I think, I just feel bad. I mean, I'm going to take this 10 seconds to say I feel bad for Keegan because nobody wants it as bad as Keegan Bradley wants it. And he plays for these things. He's got all the money in the world. He just wants to win. And he just wants to be on these team things. And he said it, and he's like, man, when I played on, when he had his experience before, it was just the kind of what I just illustrated, that everybody kind of kept to themselves a little bit. And that's why Europe seemed to have the edge and would get across the finish line quite a bit. But these guys, he said he tried to, I think in so many words, he said, I tried to get into the boys club and be more friendly with these guys, but it became quite apparent to me, and I'm adding my own words. It became quite apparent to me that if I was going to get on this team, that I had to automatically qualify myself and not rely on a pick. But I would have.
That sucks. It really does. You know what I mean? You got to play a popularity contest throughout the year in order to try to get into the Ryder Cup. That really bugs me.
Yeah.
I get the team aspect, right? And it was always, the U.S. is so individualized, where you got the Europeans, they really come together as a team. We'll see if it pans out. But my big snub was actually Dustin Johnson.
Me too.
Dustin Johnson, he was 5-0 at that Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits. Yeah. And get this. So in 2023, he won a live golf event, and he finished T10 at the US Open. Okay. He's playing golf, and he's playing it at a high level.
Doesn't care.
And
he doesn't care anymore.
He doesn't, but I will say this. I think he brings a calming presence to the U.S. in the locker room. So if you're going to talk about locker room and records, DJ has to be in that conversation.
I'll just say it this way. If I'm the captain, I don't know who I'm dropping, but I'm putting Dustin on the team. And I'm putting Dustin on the team because he's Dustin Johnson. And I just made a mistake and said he hasn't won. But yes, he does win. He has won a live event this year. But I don't think I don't even think he gives a shit anymore. I think it's been there, done that thing. If he would have got on the team, he would have embraced it. And he's just no matter what happens when you get to that first tee, he is still Dustin Johnson, right? And he lives and he just lives for that. And I will tell you, he doesn't have any quit in him. And I never thought he was going to get picked, but if I was captain,
I didn't either, but I think he got robbed.
But I can't sit here and tell you who I would not have picked. Maybe I would not have picked Sam Burns because he didn't look that good at the President's Cup, and he's not a gem of consistency over the year. I don't know. I probably would have picked. I would have picked JT for sure. I would have picked JT. So that would have left me with, who do I drop? Colin, Spieth, or Ricky? I'm going to let you put your foot in your mouth. Who do you drop out of Colin, Spieth, or Ricky Fowler if you're?
Oh, I'm going to go one further. I'm going to say that the boys club doesn't end up making it to the Ryder Cup this year. So I leave out. No, absolutely not. I would JT performed the worst out of everybody. And who's to say that all of a sudden, under the most amount of pressure you're going to face, he's just going to turn it on? I get he has a good match play record. Okay. I understand that, but his game is not there right now. And you want guys peaking at the right time to come into this Ryder Cup, which is part of the problem that I see with this entire situation of the U.S. team. So I would not have gone Jordan Spieth. I would not have gone Ricky Fowler, and I would not have gone JT. I would have brought in Dustin Johnson to play along with Brooks Koepka. I would have gone with Lucas Glover, and I would have gone with Cam Young.
Okay, I could see that. You would have left Keegan out? Because
Keegan's on the outskirts. I would have actually gone Keegan Bradley over Colin Morikawa.
You just went to this spiel on who's on form, on who's having a good year and who's been on form.
And guess what? I would have dropped Colin Morikawa and I would have gone Keegan Bradley.
I could see any match of that too. This is going to be, this isn't our Ryder Cup show. We're going to have a great Ryder Cup show, that's for sure. So this is going to be tough for the U.S. This is going to be tough for the U.S. going over there. Those fans are crazy. And I'm only a caddy, and I'm going to say, I've said that a million times, but you have no idea the nerves and the anxiety and everything that happens when you wake up that morning and you walk through, 30 or 40,000 people to get to the first tee or to get to the driving range. And they are aggressive fans over there. You're like at the pitch. It's like a soccer match. They are very well rehearsed. It's
Trust me, I know my wife's half
and
Italian.
you know the deal, man. So it's going to be unbelievable. And the home course, the home country advantage is bring those fairways in because we're bombers, right? And bring those fairways in and grow that rough up and firm those greens up. And we tend to struggle in those. We tend to struggle in those situations. I can.
There was a great question to Zach Johnson today during the press conference. How much did analytics play a role in your decision making of who's on the team? And he goes into this whole spiel about how, we have analytics that can show us who will play well on this golf course within the conditions that we believe they're going to have, that they're growing out and everything. And we've got insiders and so forth that are providing us with the information about the golf course as to how they're setting it up. So we can analytically, with the data collected, put somebody in and figure out how well they're going to play. Then the follow-up question was, did you select anybody or did you base any decisions based off of that information? And he stumbled. He didn't come up with a clean answer to that one.
I know all about these. I know a little bit about these analytics. I did a President's Cup in 2017 at Liberty in Jersey, and there were all these gigantic notebooks sitting on all these tables. And I started going through these notebooks, and they had all these crazy numbers on every player, and how they scored in certain conditions and that kind of stuff. It's like I went through 2 pages, and I'm like, who sits here and reads all of this stuff? I mean, what is the team behind the team that reads all of this kind of stuff? But I don't think there's any analytics when JT Spieth and Ricky get picked. I don't think there's analytics there whatsoever. I mean, I just described the type of golf course that it's going to be. So what does that tell you? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? You probably need to hit it in the fairway there to have a victorious week, right? So
and guess who's not hitting it in the fairway? Jordan Spieth, JT.
And Spieth.
Ricky's probably,
and who's a great driver of the golf ball? Keegan. He's always close to the lead. Yeah. He's one of the best drivers of the golf ball. And who else is another one? Dustin is an unbelievable driver of the golf ball. Lucas Glover.
I think they screwed up by leaving Lucas Glover and Keegan Bradley off of the team.
Well, I will say this. My heart goes out to Zach Johnson because he's the one who's got to wake up in the morning or last night and make those phone calls. And that has to be for such a glorious position that you've earned, Zach Johnson, who's been on so many Ryder Cup teams, 5, I think at least 5, and is obviously going to coach quite a few more, I would imagine, depending on how this one goes here in a few weeks. But, it's got to be, you're like, oh man, I'm the captain of the Ryder Cup team. And then you have to spend an hour making these phone calls. And I'm not even talking about Cam Young either. You know what I mean? He just fell off the map so bad late in the year and that kind of stuff. Obviously it was a shame that Freddie went out and said a couple of months ago that you can guarantee that Cam's going to be on the team. Freddie didn't know that Cam was going to go off form so much, but
was he off form that much? Because the Open Championship was not that long ago.
The last Open Championship? He didn't really have a chance to win, though.
Not to win, but hang on a second, because I was looking at his information earlier in the day.
You're not thinking of St. Andrews? 2 of them ago?
No, because I was looking at what his results were in 2023. Mm-hmm. So I'm pulling them up now. Let's take a quick look. So we've got, and what was crazy is he had the most top 10s out of anybody, obviously. And you go to the Open Championship, he was T8. T8.
That's not close to winning, but it's a great week.
T8? That's a top 10.
Give me his other finishes.
He was T6 at the John Deere Classic.
Tough field.
And then at the BMW Championship, he was T15. He was top 20.
70 guys. I'm talking about
still top 20.
Yeah, he's 70.
And then you go to him earlier in the year, and he probably has outside of the fact that he didn't win a golf tournament, he probably has the best resume.
I don't know about that. Of the picks?
Picks.
Keegan, better resume. 2 wins. Lucas Glover, better resume. 2 wins. It's win out here, Matt.
All right. You're correct. You're correct on that.
It's win out.
I'll concede that one
but
to
I
you,
will
Bobby.
tell you this. I was going to go into this little thing. I saw this interview that Paul Tesori did, and he's talking about the difference between Cam Young And Paul Tesori even said, man, he's like, I'm having a tough, I thought it was easy because he played so good in the match play. Obviously he was runner up in the match play and he got off to a great start. But Paul's like, here I go 13 or 14 years caddying for a guy that wanted every little bit of information possible that I could give him. And then I go to this guy who doesn't want anything, Dustin Johnson style, right? Who just goes out and plays by feel. And Paul felt like he was getting in the way all the time. He was giving him too much information. And when a caddy comes out and says that publicly like that, it's a little bit of a sign to me that caddy is not completely confident in the passenger seat. Does that make any sense to you? That if there's a question or something like that maybe he can get a little stumbly, like, should I tell him this? Should I not tell him this? And that, take it from me, it wears on you as a caddy. You have to adjust to your player style of play.
I can see that.
And it's funny, I told you numerous episodes ago when Cam Young first burst onto the scene that my son Daniel said, Dad, this Cam Young's going to be any kind of a player. And then I got paired with him at Sony when I worked for Ogletree, and I'm just like, this is the second coming. I was convinced this is the second coming of Dustin Johnson here. He had a buddy on the bag. He was doing his own thing, just hitting shots, and he'll probably win 3 times next year. The fact with Cam Young is this. He's a stud, right? We all know he's a stud. But he has this many wins on the PGA Tour. 0. Absolutely 0. And that is a shock to me, and that's a shock to you. And I'm sure that's a shock to most of the people that are real golfers, golfies, I'll call them, that listen to our podcast, that he hasn't won yet. And that's where, and I guarantee you that's wearing on him. And we'll just see. I mean, could a caddy change come up there possibly in the next year? Nothing would surprise me anymore. Nothing would surprise me. Let the guy, and I'm not comparing myself to Paul Tesori because we both have the same personalities. We're both pretty happy-go-lucky out there and that kind of stuff. We can chat it up. We can quiet it down depending on the player, whatever it takes. But, if I'm caddying for a guy like Cam Young, the first thing I'm telling him is, I don't think I need to tell you anything. Just go out and play. And if you have a question, ask me. I'll have an answer for you. So that's my own personal opinion on Cam Young. I think he's going to win a bunch of times, but the first one's always the toughest, right, Matt? First one's always the toughest. Never happened.
It is the toughest. I mean, it's kind of sad because I feel like the Ryder Cup could have been that situation that propelled him into all of a sudden having an unbelievable year next year and breaking through. So a little disappointing from that side of things.
But we're going to have a hell of a Ryder Cup show coming up. I've been involved in a couple. I can kind of tell you the ins and outs.
There's going to be some stories.
There's going to be some good stories. I got some good stories. I got some really good stories, but no dirt. Not really. There's not really any dirt to talk about. I mean, I could talk about some post-party dirt and that kind of stuff, but I don't think I want to do that quite yet.
I mean, you might. You might be talked into it.
I got a heavy-duty nicotine pouch running through me, and I might just start singing like a canary. Woof! I'm out of breath. We got anything else?
Yeah. I mean, that sums it up for the U.S. Ryder Cup picks. Obviously, we're a little bit unsatisfied with it. It was kind of obvious that Zach was going to do that and go in that direction. So it is what it is. Good luck. I mean, I hope it works out. I hope we become the European squad that, really that team aspect comes into play and really shows up over in Rome. Now, in regards to what to watch this week, because there's no PGA Tour events, so that includes Korn Ferry. There's only a couple things to watch, folks. And here is your rundown. So, number 1, you've got the Omega European Masters starting on Thursday. That is a DP World Tour event. Yep, so that's pretty solid. That's going to start.
They call it Crans, Montana. It's up in the ski slope villages.
What did you just say to me again? Last week you told me about the Grand Poobah.
Is the name of the golf course, isn't it? Crans, Montana.
Okay, I thought you were like yelling an obscenity at me again.
It's up in the skiing area. It's the golf course. They actually ski on the golf course during the winter. If I'm not mistaken, Sergio, and that's where the big money lives. Sergio and Adam Scott have a condo there. We do have one American in the field, a guy that was a rookie last year that we raved about, Justin Sue, who kind of didn't play great towards the end of the year, but we always have an American in the field, so he'll be in the field. And Matt Fitzpatrick's in the field, and I think it's, from what I've heard from other caddies, and Troy Merritt's played in it numerous times, and he's like, man, it's one of the coolest tournaments out there. So we do have that to watch, obviously.
That's going to be a fun one.
else
That
is on the
starts at
lineup?
7 a.m. Eastern. Actually, is that Eastern time? Let me make sure. All times are in Eastern time. So, yes,
Okay.
7:30 a.m. Eastern. Then at 6 p.m.
Mm.
Eastern, we've got the LPGA Portland Classic,
Yeah.
folks. Go watch yourself some Nelly Korda.
Yeah. Is she playing?
I have no
Okay.
idea. But go watch yourself some Nelly Korda. Way to ruin that segment, Bobby. Nobody was going to go watch because it's the LPGA Tour. I'm just kidding, LPGA Tour. I love you. You ladies are phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the best golf swings. Honestly, if anybody wants to learn how to have a great golf swing, watch the ladies because they were so fundamentally sound. I mean, it's better than watching the guys because the guys are so athletic with things, but the women have such pure fundamentals. So go watch yourself some Nelly Korda if she's playing. And then Friday, you got the same thing. So 7:30 a.m., we got the Omega European Masters. 6 to 9. It's late for the East Coast, but you got a nighttime game going on with the Portland Classic round 2. Then Saturday. This is when it all begins, folks, because the Omega European Masters is going to go on a tape delay. So they're going to have that at 2 to 5:30 p.m. because it's day 1 of the Walker Cup, which is 8:30 a.m. Eastern time to 2 p.m. So actually, it's going to be 5:30 a.m. my time. So I'm going to have to get up a little bit early this Saturday, have quite a few coffees. But here's the thing. For those of you that are interested in watching the Omega European Masters round 3 and not waiting for the tape delay, because the tape delay comes on right after the Walker Cup. So you could have yourself a nice little Saturday with the Walker Cup, then you're going to watch the Omega, and then you're going to jump into the Portland Classic. But there is an option to watch the Omega European Masters at its normal time, which is going to be 6:30 a.m., and that is going to be on the NBC Sports app. And then Sunday, once again, it's going to be the same situation, folks. So the Omega European Masters, if you want to watch it on the NBC Sports app or wait for the tape delay right after the Walker Cup, day 2, and then the Portland Classic. Whew, that is a mouthful, Bobby, but that sums it up.
But you don't want to know what the bad news is. All that time you spent on that, college football starts this weekend on Saturday. Ain't nobody watching any golf.
Which, by the way, I will be at the first game for ASU,
Yeah, aren't you guys in
which
some kind
is
of trouble?
actually Thursday.
ASU in some kind of trouble?
Yeah, they gave themselves a self-imposed ban. Our guys in our tailgate, they're all diehard ASU fans, and we have season tickets. I'm not a diehard season ticket holder. I'm just a season ticket holder. So they're going off in this group chat that we have, and they want this AD gone.
I think the best
the athletic director.
I think the best college football game is Thursday night. Is Florida Utah probably? I think Utah's
actually. I think the best Thursday night game is going to be ASU, and I have no idea who they're playing.
It's Florida and Utah. Utah. They're 14th in the
Utah.
All right. We got some.
All right. So here's the other great thing about this being our very first live broadcast. I have no idea if I set this up correctly. So I was on with millions.co, who is the streaming platform that has a lot of top UFC guys. They've brought us in to be the golf aspect for the streaming platform. And I have no idea if this was set up right. If there's anybody listening right now, just put in a comment. Ask us any question that you want whatsoever. I'm going to give it a couple seconds, Bobby, and we're going to see if there's anybody that, if I can actually see a comment that ends up getting posted on here, because again, we set up the recording through one service, have it shipped over to millions.co. That way, we can have our setup and everything with our backdrops and whatnot. I mean, your backdrop's phenomenal. You got multiple angles there. That green screen, I don't know why you set up your green screen like that, but it's fantastic. St. Andrews
better.
Which, by the way, this is where
it looks like that exactly.
Walker Cup's
18
happening.
days out of the year there, I think. With the blue sky.
I know, right? So here's the thing. We'll wrap it up. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody on, but that being said, I don't know if I set it up correctly either, Bobby. So we're starting from square one. I mean, I didn't do a great job, I would say, of getting the word out there. So we'll see as the weeks go on. We'll build up a real presence, and we will get YouTube added as well, which YouTube was not one that was an option tonight. So they need like 24 hours or something like that for approval. So we'll start to bring over some of our YouTube subscribers and so forth over to this live broadcast. And then I was also talking with Mook, our guy over in Australia. Yeah. And unfortunately, so shout out to Mook. He lost his father. So we want to send our condolences out to you. He's been going through a tough time. And we were chatting on Instagram and just going back and forth on some stuff. But I told him, I was like, hey, we miss your comments on YouTube, man. And that's when he told me about his father passing and going through a tough time and everything. He's like, but the guys still get together every Friday and listen to the podcast and everything. So I don't suspect that they'll be on live with us at any point just because of the time difference, but you never know, Bobby. So in the weeks to come, we'll be doing our recordings live just like this. And man, I can't wait for Ryder Cup week. So tonight, folks, we have gone over Viktor Hovland's dominance and really how he has shapeshifted from being a happy-go-lucky college frat kid who's smoked a ton of pot, it seemed like, for a while, and then turned into this machine, a disciplined professional who just, he looks unbeatable. I think, and I forgot to mention this. I was a guest on a podcast called Sports Town this past week, and it was actually on Friday. And he was asking me about Viktor Hovland. And I go, well, first of all, he's going to win this week. And I was adamant because I just saw it out of Viktor. And a couple things that I noticed, too, is that Eduardo Molinari is the one who's doing his stats and strategy now. Did you hear about that? And then on top of that, you got Mayo, who's convinced him of his short game, but he just looked like an absolute machine. Wasn't smiling, wasn't super friendly out there. And I think that is the turning point for Viktor Hovland. So expect him to win a major next year. And then I also brought up the, what was the other one that I brought up as well? Oh, Wyndham Clark. So watch out for him next year because now that he's got confidence, finished third at the Tour Championship like we talked about, but watch out for him in 2024 because after the Ryder Cup experience, that's another guy that I think is just going to go off. He's got every piece of his game now completely put together. We talked a little bit about Xander and just bad timing and bad luck. We went over the Walker Cup. We're very excited about that. The U.S. is going to dominate. We got the Ryder Cup with the U.S. captain's picks. Little suspect. I mean, Twitter was going off because there's a lot of live golf lovers on Twitter. And then, which I think we're broadcasting to right now, so who knows. But then we've also got the what to watch this weekend with the Walker Cup starting on Saturday, the Omega European Masters starting on Thursday, and the Portland Classic LPGA tournament starting on Thursday as well. And then obviously a lot of people are going to be watching college football, including myself. That's it, Bobby. All. Well done tonight. Well done tonight. Hang on for me, Bobby, because remember, we got to upload this whole thing after we're done here. But here we go. I'm going to hit the final button of the night. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.pullhookgolf.com for more information.